Welcome to another episode of Iraq War 2003. This is Frank H. Wallis, Ph.D. Who gave Bush II permission to attack Iraq in 2003? Congress, which demonstrated an establishment bias in favor of a stable U.S.-dominated oil market and a stable Persian Gulf imposed by the United States government. Congress played the role of Imperial legislature, hearing testimony and enacting laws to further the material interests of the United States, and specifically the petroleum lobby. The confluence of interests with Imperial policy was most evident in the October 16, 2002 joint resolution authorizing Bush II to invade Iraq and stabilize the Imperial periphery. Congress voiced a common refrain over the years: America needed to reduce dependence on foreign oil. Republicans in particular were adamant about this. The solution was more domestic drilling on public land. Industry lobbyists condemned reliance on foreign oil at prices that hurt the domestic producer, but they didn't mind American oil companies making a profit on Middle Eastern oil. The Republican drumbeat against foreign oil increased under Bush II. They were very excited by the Bush-Cheney energy policy of more domestic drilling and taking over Iraq. Bush was leading the United States into an oil war of WMD fantasies. Somehow the Republicans believed that taking over Iraq would lower oil prices and boost domestic drilling. They were all paid shills for the American oil lobby. Republicans like to talk about energy security, which meant a return to oil in the control of the American cartel, squeezing out foreign competition and setting up a monopoly. They never mentioned Canadian oil shale or the fact that the U.S. imported very little oil from the Persian Gulf. As we have seen in previous episodes, the majors wanted to extract every barrel of Gulf oil for themselves and repatriate profits at their leisure without paying any taxes. The Pentagon would make sure American companies had a stable market in the Middle East, but the uncertainty of Saddam Hussein caused instability on the Imperial periphery, and Bush already said that would be ending very soon. It didn't have to be that way. For the period 1996 to 2001, Republicans voted to block energy supply research and development at the Department of Energy to develop alternative fuels and renewable energy. They repeatedly rejected increased fuel economy standards in cars and trucks. They also admitted that sanctions against Iraq were not working. What the oil lobby really didn't like was Saddam cutting off Iraqi oil in mini embargoes, driving up oil prices. The Bush regime was ensuring that the United States could never be held hostage by foreign oil suppliers. Direct control was the only solution. As U.S. troops were deployed to secure Iraqi oil fields in 2002, the Bush position was that the United States' actions in Iraq were not about oil. He assured the world that Iraqi oil belonged to the Iraqi people. Congress had seen intense lobbying for a U.S. invasion of Iraq during the Clinton regime in the 1990s. Ahmed Chalabi, president of the Iraq National Congress, a Shiite group aiming to replace Saddam, was a frequent guest of Republican-chaired committees who also wanted Saddam gone. Chalabi was notorious for lying about Iraqi WMD programs, and he was used extensively by the Bush regime to buttress claims about Saddam. Chalabi felt the United States government would save lots of money if it helped overthrow Saddam. $1 trillion later, and what do the American people get out of it? A pro-Iranian regime in Iraq. Zalmay Khalilzad, Bush II's future ambassador to occupied Iraq, told Congress that containment was not getting WMD out of Saddam's hands. The U.S. had two options: either let Saddam have WMD or invade Iraq and overthrow Saddam. Neocon Richard Pearl told Congress that Clinton's policy of containment was allowing Saddam to build H-bombs, and the CIA was just lying about his WMD programs. William Kristol, another neocon, told Congress in 2002 that Bush wanted to promote the principles of liberty and justice in the Islamic world, but Iraq stood in the way. Americans would be welcomed in Baghdad as liberators if they invaded. The Middle East would soon be pro-American. On October 31, 1998, Congress passed the Iraq Liberation Act, that it should be the policy of the United States to remove Saddam from power. With one of their own in the Oval Office in 2001, these Republican war hawks had all they could hope for. The CIA under Bush II was far more enthusiastic about regime change. In the spring of 2002, they told Congress the Iraqi chemical industry could be diverted quickly to manufacturing deadly agents, and they had the means for a rejuvenated nuclear weapons program. Saddam also had a history of supporting terrorism, and Iraq might have an intercontinental ballistic missile by 2020. Caspar Weinberger, Reagan's Secretary of Defense in the 1980s, claimed Saddam had a significant relationship with the Palestinian terrorist groups. The U.S. could not risk the possibility that Saddam could share weapons of mass destruction with these terrorists. In late 2002, Colin Powell said Bush II had been speaking about the Saddam problem from the very beginning of his administration, but 9/11 made it imperative to do something now. On the same day, Rumsfeld made the Bush II case before the Senate Armed Services Committee. He could not say exactly when, but he was certain that in the future Saddam would attack the United States with WMD. He raised the specter of Munich and Pearl Harbor. The USA was in danger. Senator Joe Biden, of the very same Senate Foreign Relations Committee, told Bush that Saddam and WMD posed a significant threat to the Persian Gulf and to the world. Saddam must be eliminated. All foreign policy experts testifying before Congress in 2002 agreed that Iraq must be invaded. Robert Mueller, director of the FBI, said al-Qaeda was clearly the most urgent threat to United States interests. His particular concern was that Saddam might supply them with WMD. One of the rare dissenters from war mania was Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State under Clinton, who supported more UN inspections. On October 16, 2002, Congress passed an authorization for use of military force against Iraq. This resolution was a blank check given to Bush II, the first president to receive such a privilege, all based on falsehoods about WMD. Let's take a brief look at how the oil lobby influenced the Senate vote based on FEC data for the period 1997 to 2002. Voting yes were 29 Democrats and 48 Republicans. Voting no, 21 Democrats, an independent, and 1 Republican. Of the 21 Democratic senators who voted against the resolution, only 3 had oil company contributions. As for the 29 Democrats who sided with Bush II and voted yes, 10 had oil company contributions. Of the 48 Republican senators who voted yes, 47 had significant oil company contributions. And yet, there are those who insist the Iraq War had nothing to do with oil. The conundrum of the Iraq War was that Iraq must be absorbed into the empire, but could not become absorbed unless it was stable. After 2003, this mission would be handed over to Iraqi collaborators to manage their own absorption. In effect, Iraqis would fight Iraqis in the global war on terrorism because resistors of U.S.-imposed stability attracted thousands of Muslim terrorists to fight the Americans in Iraq. If terrorists had not existed in Iraq before 2003, they did now. Bush II would search for ways to leave Iraq, declare victory, and then hand the problem and actual fighting over to American-trained Iraqis. But Exxon-Mobil would get its long-awaited concession. This is your Empire historian, Frank H. Wallis, Ph.D. Thank you for listening and thinking.